Madam President,
Senator Figures,
I'd like to start my first hour, please.
you're recognized.
Thank you, Madam President. You know, here we are again dealing with one of these bills for ourselves without having these men, and I know there's a woman who is sponsoring this bill from the House, but it has been predominantly done by women. And Madam President, I would like to ask my colleagues to respect me without the loud chatter as they have the previous colleagues who've been with this mic. Thank you, Madam President. This bill reminds me of the accountability bill that was passed a few weeks ago, because we were told, and we're still being told, that that bill was about helping the poor little children in the failing schools across Alabama. Children who had nowhere to go, Senator Williams and Senator Marsh, who are being so disrespectful right now. We were told at that time that that bill was to help a certain segment of our population, a certain segment that didn't have a choice to get a really good quality education where they were. We were told that these children were actually stuck at these schools with nowhere to go, despite the No Child Left Behind Act, which already gives them the ability to move from a low-performing school to another school in their district, which also provided transportation, despite the fact that under the leadership of Dr. Bice, our state superintendent of education here in Alabama, and the great job that he is doing, despite the 20 schools or so that were named torch-bearing schools for 2012. And these were schools that were all in the same areas that they wanted to say the poor little children in failing schools who were stuck. Typically, when the State Board of Education look at the failing schools, they go with the 5% of failing schools. But my colleagues wanted to go with 10% of the failing schools. Well, it's so ironic, but that bill that was told to us that was going to help the poor little children in the failing schools is actually not going to help the poor little children in the failing schools at all. In fact, it's going to help give tax credits to people who already have the money, who already have the means, who didn't even ask for a tax credit, who chose to put their children in private schools. They are the ones who are going to benefit. And while they're benefiting, they're going to help deplete the Education Trust Fund that was set up to fund public schools. And then they want to bring another bill back to make sure that these private schools, where they say these poor little children in the failing schools can get a tax credit and scholarships, they want to take, they're not even providing transportation for them, nor are they really providing all of the money that it's going to take to go to those schools. So we were told that. So how can you believe that when they say they're trying to help these poor little children in the failing schools, when it was really to help the people who have children in private schools? So why would we trust this piece of legislation that's saying we're trying to make the clinics safer for the women who have abortions, when they know that they are totally against abortions and have tried for decades to abolish abortions, outlaw abortions, close abortion clinics, do whatever they could? I shall never forget the bill they brought last year that talked about the doctor having to use an invasive instrument to do an ultrasound on the woman that was actually compared to rape. And as some of you will recall, I said that I had an amendment that said that if the woman had to have that ultrasound, then so would the man who impregnated her. And if the paternity was uncertain, then she'd have to have all of the men that she had have this procedure as well. And if some of you have seen, I've heard people talking about what is this show where the Jerry Springer, I think it is, who has the women on the show, and they're trying to find out who the father is of their children. And somebody was telling me the other day that one woman had like 4 men on there, and all of them were not positive as the father. So you can imagine how many men would have had to undergo that procedure as well. But you never see women in the legislature coming up with bills trying to tell men what to do. And it was so amazing last year when that bill came before us. I got so many emails, phone calls from women, young and old, Democrats and Republicans. Because you see, this bill, although it seems that it's only the Republicans that are actually sponsoring it and pushing for it, it's not a Democratic or Republican issue. It's not a black or white issue. In fact, today downstairs at the women's rally, and we have some of those women here with us today who are here, who are still here, we saw a big sign saying Republican women were out there. So it's a woman's issue. It's not a racial issue. It's not a political issue. It's a gender issue. And unfortunately, it happens to be against women. I told the women that, well, they have been told that there are about 52% of women in the state of Alabama who are registered voters. And since we have that many women here in the state of Alabama, I think that number should be reflected in the number of elected officers that we have, officials that we have in the state of Alabama. So I challenged them to go out and find women to run for these seats in the Senate and the House. Of course, I told them everyone except the 5 women and the Democrats. So we're really going to be looking forward to that, because I actually think that we would be in better shape if we had a majority of women running this state house. I think we would be in so much better shape. And it's so amazing, too, because every one of us was given birth by what? A woman. If it had not been for that woman carrying that child for 9 months, facing whatever...
Senator Figures.
Yes, ma'am.
The desk has received a resolution from the Rules Committee.
Is it a cloture petition? You mean the zapper has zapped me? I'm honored.
Clerk will read it.
A petition to close debate. We, the undersigned members of the Senate Rules Committee, petition the Senate pursuant to Senate Rule 20 that debate on the pending measure, House Bill 57, shall cease at 7:02 on April 2, 2013. Signed Senator Wagner, Busman, Schofield, Glover, Orr, Pittman, Dial, and Holly.
Madam, you weren't out there. Madam President, may I continue?
Certainly.
Thank you. One of the arguments I heard here, too, is the reason for this bill is to make it safer. And Senator Beeson, you had said earlier that you had heard, but you said, I don't know if it's true or this is fact or not. And I sat in my seat and said, well, why are you saying that? You said that a lot of these clinics were, that there were veterinarians what do you call them? They're veterinarian doctors, but what do you call the clinics? The vets, let's just say the vets, where you take the animals to the vets. You said those, it had been said that those were safer than some of the clinics. Well, it's so amazing because I'd like to compare apples to apples. And when we're talking about human beings, let's compare human beings to human beings. It says that fewer than 1% of all U.S. abortion patients experience a major complication and the risk of death associated with abortion. But it's 10 times lower than that associated with childbirth. So what are you going to say about all these obstetricians that have hospital privileges and are delivering babies? Are you going to bring a bill to make it safer for the women who are having the children, who choose to have the children? Another question I pose to you is that I never hear any bills being presented that speaks to doing things within our communities, within our state, to keep a female from becoming pregnant and being put in the position of having to make the decision of whether or not she wants an abortion. When are we going to do that? If